Chief Justice of India CJI Chandrachud emphasized the importance of addressing how children with disabilities are treated in schools during the 9th Annual National Stakeholders Consultation. He raised concerns about the lack of policies to prevent bullying and discrimination, noting that many school principals believe children must simply survive among their peers. He pointed out that while mainstreaming children with disabilities is essential, many schools lack the facilities needed to accommodate their specific requirements, such as ramps or lifts for the access to science labs.
Two of my own associations. One of the speakers who's going to talk to you is Rahul Bajaj, who's a Rhodes Scholar. And Rahul wrote to me a couple of years ago and said that I want to come back to Delhi and intern with you. And I said, why on earth would somebody want to give up the rest of a Rhodes Scholarship and come to work with a judge of the Supreme Court? I mean, go ahead and finish your PhD. So he said, no, I have something better in mind for my future. And so he came and worked with me. But he said, before I start working with you, I interned with Justice Lalit, and I realized in that short internship that there's so much that you have to do in the Supreme Court to make that workplace a barrier-free workplace for me. So I said, well, we'll try and do that. There's so much that a judge can do with a Chief Justice can do much more because, you can change policies. But even when I was a judge of the Supreme Court at that point of time, before my assuming office as Chief Justice, that really set us into making small and incremental changes in the way we work in the Supreme Court. Digitizing files, making those files compatible with screen reader access, OCR-enabled files. The website of the Supreme Court had a visual capture. So something as simple as altering a visual capture into a verbal capture makes a difference on whether someone with visual disabilities can access all the information which the Supreme Court provides. So in the course of our association with someone who was there to learn, I think we learned so much more, and our institutions get transformed. We have Sarasuni here, and she appeared in our court a few months ago, and we realized that we had no sign language interpreting facilities in the Supreme Court. Now, how does a young lawyer who has a particular condition live with dignity and conduct her profession with dignity unless we create those conditions? And we can't look at that as a function of how much would be the budgetary impact, because it's all about the nature of the society which we wish to create in future. Do we truly aspire to have an integrated, inclusive society? And if we do, I think there is so much that our society has to do and learn in terms of the aspirations of those who suffer from conditions of disability. And the last thing, then I'll briefly make my formal presentation. Yesterday in our court, we had someone on a wheelchair, and she was really assisting the court in a very important aspect of disability rights. And after the arguments were over and she was about to leave the court, I asked her, ma'am, what was your experience about navigating the space of the Supreme Court before you came into the court? So she said, well, I'm extremely happy because we have an accessibility desk. I was guided into where I should go. I didn't have any problem. But she says, I have one problem, and that is your courts are so overcrowded. So I said that, there's so much that judges can do, but I don't think I can do much about the population coming into the open court. On a lighter footing, one of the problems which we encountered trying to get these children to be mobile as they were growing up was about trying to find electronically operated wheelchairs. Because if you have a wheelchair which somebody has to push along in a home or outside, that means that that child is dependent on someone else. That child is dependent on someone else to go out. The child is dependent on someone else to escort her to the toilet. The child is dependent on someone else to put her from the bed to the wheelchair. We finally found wheelchairs which are electronically operated. But again, I wonder how many parents can afford this. We have a petition pending before our court on whether GST should not be removed on these assisted devices. How many parents can afford that cost of that single wheelchair? Incidentally, I always tell the girls that this is a home and not a highway. So when you zip in and around on your wheelchairs, please be careful that there are others you might be tripping over. Traditionally, caregiving has been an often overlooked and thankless task, shaped by patriarchal norms that have historically placed the burden of care squarely on families. The unique needs of persons with disabilities are still, in many cases, viewed as a private domestic issue rather than a collective social responsibility. While we may advocate for these needs to be met by our social institutions, those institutions often fall short of providing the support that is truly needed. The challenges faced by persons with disabilities extend far beyond issues of physical accessibility. They must also contend with entrenched societal biases,